So in the studio, I have Harrison with me. Harrison, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, I actually can't remember your last name.
It's pronounced Koehli.
Koehli?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I have Harrison Koehli here with me, and you're a publisher or editor?
Both, actually. I work for the publishing company, Red Pill Press. I also do editing for that company. We're pretty small. Only got, a few employees in Grand Prairie, so we share a lot of the work.
Now, I'm going to tell you right now, like, I was traveling up there, I went to see my mom, and I stopped in at the local head shop, and I got directed down to your bookstore. What's the name again?
It's called The Rabbit Hole.
The Rabbit Hole, which is perfectly aptly named. But I went in there, and just an amazing selection of books, and I was turned on through the Red Pill Press to this book, Political Ponerology. But first I want to find out, how did, it's just a kind of unlikely place in some sense to find such an amazing collection of books published in Grand Prairie. How did the Red Pill Press get going?
Well, it was really just a guy that happened to live in Grand Prairie. We got the idea we needed to start this company to publish some books that we were interested in, and it just happened to be where we ended up. So the location didn't really matter. It was the material we wanted to publish, which was this book and a few others when we started out. But it was really more about the book than the location. The location just happened.
Just that's where the people happen to be.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, I was just so, because living in BC and living in Nelson, and we have kind of like a transhumic exchange with Alberta of holidayers and land purchasers and whatever. We kind of consider it kind of a hinterland over the mountains,
Yeah.
But it's heartening to know that there's such amazing publishing going on there. Now, why was this book of importance to get published?
Well, we believe, and a lot of others do, that it's a pretty revolutionary book. It was actually written in 1984 and originally published in a limited edition at one of the universities in New York. So it was only a few copies were printed. The author, Andrew Lobaczewski, wasn't able to get it published in New York for various reasons, which I could get into tonight. And so the book basically sat in a few university libraries until the author found a website of one of the other authors that we publish and contacted her because she had a page on psychopathy. So she'd written a bunch on psychopaths and their influence in politics. And so he contacted her and basically said, I've written this book, can I send you a copy? So she got the copy, she read it, and realized what an amazing book it was and that it needed to be published. And so we got on that, and we're happy to have done it because this book wouldn't have been made available if it wasn't for the fact that Lobaczewski found the website and got in contact with someone who understood or could see the importance of the book.
Yeah. I understand in the past it had garnered some pretty harsh attention from communist folk.
There's a bit of a backstory to that, starting with the Nazi invasion of Poland, actually, because the author is from Poland. He is a psychologist. And when the Nazis invaded, they outlawed the practice of psychology and psychiatry, and they actually killed the vast majority of the psychologists living at the time. There were about over 400 in 1939, and in 1940 there were about 50.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
No, yeah, and it's a pretty amazing fact. It was genocide against the Polish people, and then the Soviets, after the Nazis fell, the Soviets came in, and the Soviets socialized psychology, and they strictly controlled it. They were only allowed to practice Pavlovian psychiatry, so they weren't they weren't allowed to research things like psychopathy. What actually happened was they strictly controlled the subjects that were available, that were allowed to be researched, and books were destroyed and topics were banned. And Lobaczewski mentions, and he told us, that to be caught doing research on psychopathy or psychopathy could lead, you'd either get sent to prison, you'd be executed, or you'd be exiled. And so this kind of research was done under strict conspiracy. Lobaczewski didn't even know the names of a lot of the people that were collaborating with him on this work, because to know names would be too dangerous. If one of them got caught, being tortured, they might reveal the other names. So they had this network of people that operated in secrecy. They sent things using a little bit of scientific runaround. They called their papers, for example, some notes on mentally deficient children. And these would actually be papers about the leaders of the regime at the time.
So that was what the main fear was of the Communist Party, was that their own leaders, their own infrastructure it was being analyzed for what it was and for what the leaders were.
Yeah, and actually pretty early on in the 60s, a bunch of the psychologists in Poland, Hungary, a bunch of those regions, they got together, and they, in private, they knew right away that it was what they called a macro-social psychopathological system. So it was a social system that was run by people who were pathological. And so they knew this, but they couldn't really say anything about it because, well, like I said, if they would, they'd be arrested, possibly executed. And so the first 2 editions of this book were actually destroyed. Lobaczewski was just one researcher out of many. He specialized in the study of psychopaths. And it got to the point in the 60s where there was a big crackdown on psychologists, and he lost all his contacts. And so he took up the responsibility to write the book, because the person who had planned to write the book just disappeared. So he wrote the book, and he was living in a small town, I can't remember the name of it, in Poland at the time, and the locals warned him that there was going to be a secret police raid on his house. And so he took everything he had to the furnace and burned it, and minutes later the secret police showed up. And so the first copy was destroyed in order to save his life. Second copy was lost. He tried to get it out of the country, but the person he gave it to didn't do anything with it. Who knows what happened to it. And then eventually he was denounced by he contacted a guy that worked for the Radio Free Europe and the Roman correspondent, and the Roman correspondent denounced him to the Polish authorities. He was probably a Polish Secret Service agent, and so denounced him, and this was the 3rd time or the 4th time he'd been arrested, and they told him either you're going to prison or we'll give you your passport. So he took his passport and moved to New York, where he went through a whole bunch more trouble, and that's where he eventually wrote the 3rd copy of the book, which is the one that we published.
Now, can you tell me the meaning of the word ponerology? It's spelled, for listeners out there, it's spelled Ponerology.
Well, ponerology is derived from the Greek word poneros, and poneros means evil. I believe it's used in the New Testament, and the connotation for it is an evil with a corrupting influence. Mm-hmm. So ponerology originally was a little-known branch of theology which studied evil in religious terms, and Lobaczewski decided to adopt that term for a scientific purpose because there was no, and there still isn't in the general scientific community, there isn't a field that studies evil in general and its nature in individuals and the effect that those individuals have on groups, other individuals, and social processes. Mm-hmm. So ponerology is the scientific study of evil.
Whoa. And so this is Political Ponerology, the study of evil, influencing evil in politics.
Yes.
The influencing effects of evil in politics. Now, I've been slowly making my way through it. I'm like maybe a third of the way through, because I'm telling you, it's pretty heavy reading. Like, it's not light on the skull. It's pretty,
it's really tough.
Like, you need almost like an Jungian psychology degree to really like grasp some of the concepts. But he explains everything really well, but it's very, very complex.
Yeah, that's one of the unfortunate things about the book, is that it's written in a very dense psychological language. It is like we've had a bunch of people, like we've had people tell us that have no psychology background that, it was tough to read, but they read it once, twice, 3 times, and it eventually all starts making sense. So it is a chore. It's tough to get through it the first time, but once you do, and once you get your head around some of the new words he uses, if you have a dictionary next to you, it helps. Once you do that, there's just so much to the book. It's pretty thin, but it took me ages to get through it all.
Mm-hmm. I'm still working on it. So, I'm just not sure where to start here on the actual book itself. Like, where do you think you would start with trying to kind of explain where the book is going in terms of our Western culture? Like, or a broader sense of how these leaders, the nature of their kind of psychoses.
Well, I think a good analogy to start with would be just to get an overall idea of what the book represents and why it's important, is to look at the experiment that Milgram did. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, the Milgram experiment, but Milgram was a psychologist. I believe it was in the 60s that he did his experiment. And what he did was, he did an experiment where there were 2 subjects. One was hooked up to a machine that administered electric shocks, and this person was actually an actor who the other person didn't know was an actor. The other person, the real test subject, would be in the room and would be told that it was a learning experiment, and that each time the person gave a wrong answer, they were to administer a shock, and so the test was to see how shocks affected learning. But the real goal of the experiment was to see how many people would actually administer the shock to the fullest degree, which was a lethal degree, just because the experimenter told them to do so. And it ended up that, well, first of all, every single subject went past 300 volts. 300 is about the upper range of what a taser administers, and about 50% went above 450 volts. So a large amount of people administered what they believed to be a lethal shock to a person just because the experimenter told them to. Mm-hmm. And so this is really a microcosm of what happens and what the book describes, in the sense that we have these leaders who are psychopathic, who will basically tell a population what to do, not in so many words, and just by the very nature of them saying it and being an authority, there will be a group of people that will follow them no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so it's really, the book describes this 2-pronged dynamic. There's the people who follow the will of leaders who tell them what to do, and then there's the nature of the leaders themselves. Yeah. So there's these 2 groups, and Ponerology deals mostly with the social dominators, the people that become the leaders, but then there's also a bunch of research being done on the followers, and I guess I could talk about both groups, if that's all right. Yeah, and there's an aspect of sociopathy and psychopathy, right? Can you say that again? Is the sociopathic nature and the psychopathic nature together, or does one lead into the other? Well, it depends on who you ask for your definitions, because there's a bit of controversy in the field. Sociopathy implies a social influence that basically creates antisocial behavior. So, but the word psychopath is in the field. It's used to describe someone who is born with a certain personality.
Okay.
So a psychopath is born a psychopath. There's nothing that can happen in childhood that will make them better, or anything that can happen later on to make them better. They're actually, Lobaczewski describes it as they're actually born with a deficit. They're born without the ability to feel higher emotions. Whereas a sociopath can be someone who becomes antisocial through early childhood experience, brain damage, that sort of thing.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure what those two different kinds of ideas were. And,
well, one of the important things to remember is that Lobaczewski points out that it's the psychopaths that are the most dangerous. And, well, I guess I can talk a little bit about psychopaths. There's a lot of misconceptions about them. When most people hear the word, they think of Hannibal Lecter or Ted Bundy. Now, the thing is, Ted Bundy was a psychopath, but very few, like a minuscule number of psychopaths are serial killers. And that's what most people think of when they hear the word, is a serial killer.
Yeah.
But what psychopathy is really describing is a group of people. Now, the numbers vary. Robert Hare, who's one of the leading experts in the field, he operates in Vancouver, actually.
Oh, wow.
He estimates about 1% of the population is a psychopath. And what that means is that these people are essentially emotionally retarded. They're born without the ability to form social bonds, to feel for other people. They're completely egocentric. They feel no guilt. So from the time that they're children, they develop without the emotions that everyone else has. Now, normal people will develop with the emotions. They'll learn to feel empathy for other people. They'll learn social conventions, things that are considered polite or things you just don't do. Mm-hmm. But psychopaths grow up without all of this. And so they live in a world where everyone else makes these has these strange reactions to things that happen. So if a person laughs or cries or feels embarrassed or anxious, these things strike a psychopath as being like just illogical, strange reactions. There's with no meaning behind them. Yeah. I can't remember which one, but one of the researchers in psychopathy gave one story how he was interviewing a psychopath in prison, and they were doing a test on him to see his reactions to emotions on faces. So they'd show a picture of a person with a certain emotion and ask what emotion that was. Now, this one psychopath, when he was shown a picture of fear, he said that he didn't know what emotion it was. All he knew was that that's the face that people made before he stabbed them.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So they have no comprehension of what other people feel. It's just some strange facial reaction that they make.
Now, just because they can't feel and they don't understand, are they unpopular people?
Well, no, because this is the interesting thing, is that they can't feel emotion, but what they can do is they realize that they have to act in a certain way to get what they want. So they learn from a very early age how to imitate human emotion.
Oh, wow.
So what they do is, another scary story is that Robert Hare, who I mentioned previously, he was called in as an advisor to a movie. I can't remember which actress was in it, but he was advising this actress who was playing a psychopath. And she asked for a scene to kind of get into this character, and he said, okay, well, imagine you're walking down the street and you see a car accident. And outside the car accident, there's a mother and her child has just been killed in the car accident. And you see, so she sees the mother there holding her child and weeping. What the psychopath would do would be go home, go in front of the mirror, and start contorting their face, trying to make the expression of crying. So they learn all these facial expressions and things to say in certain situations so that they really seem like they're a normal person. And the thing is that they're kind of they're extra normal. So
they're perfectly normal.
Yeah. So they're perfectly charming. They say all the right things. They're popular. And that's why it comes as such a shock when people find out that these people lead a second life.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ted Bundy was a Republican candidate. Like he was going places. He was this charming, attractive man, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's revealed that he's this serial killer. And oftentimes when this happens, not just with Ted Bundy, but with politicians and businessmen and even just husbands, it's revealed that they've got this second life, and people just can't believe it. Like their best friends say, I had no idea. Like, and some of them won't even believe it when it does happen.
Yeah, they'll go into a state of denial.
Yep.
That no, it couldn't possibly be.
And that's what we have with our political system, is that there are so many people who just will not even. They just can't accept that, let's say, their favorite politician is a psychopath, mm-hmm. or even that this kind of thing happens. It's just, it pushes too many buttons, it causes you to ask too many questions, and so a lot of people will just close shut when they hear the idea.
Mm-hmm. So the character of a psychopath is suited towards politics.
What's that? I couldn't hear
the psychopathic characteristics are perfectly suited to politics.
Yeah, exactly. Because they'll say anything. They'll lie. Like psychopaths are pathological liars. They'll tell just an inordinate amount of lies, and they won't feel anything about it. That's one of the things that all the researchers notice when they interview them, is that even when the psychopath has to know that the researcher knows that they're lying, they'll still lie, and they'll just tell lie upon lie upon lie. And then once they're caught in a lie, they'll just lie again to cover up for the other lie. It's almost like they can't realize that, or they just don't care. It's almost like they don't know what a fact is. They just create reality as it comes into their mind. They have this idea of, okay, well, I know what I want, so I'm going to manipulate these facts so that the people that I'm manipulating will know that the reality that I'm creating. Mm-hmm. In Robert Hare's book, Without Conscience, he gives one example of this psychopath who had he had a bunch of women, and I think it was his wife, had found out about his mistress. So he lied to her and said, that's a total lie. I love you. I've never cheated on you whatsoever. And so when Robert Hare asked him about this, he said, well, but you were lying. And he said, well, she didn't know that. Like, they have, it depends entirely on what the people they're lying to think. So in this case, the wife didn't know, so what he was telling her was the truth, because that's what he wanted her to know. It just doesn't really make any sense how they think.
Yeah.
It's totally foreign.
So what I'm interested in too is how does that relate to the power structure within politics? Those who are above them and give them commands or are in a higher power than they are, how do they react to being told what to do, or respond to commands, or how do they fit into like a military or political hierarchy?
Well, if I understand your question, the way psychopaths work is that they'll be totally submissive to someone who's in a higher position to them, but they'll always, behind the scenes, be working to take that person's position.
Okay.
So, again, Robert Hare wrote another book called Snakes in Suits about psychopaths in the corporate environment, so in business and corporations, companies, things like that. And he gave how they work in that kind of environment. And what they'll do is they'll see immediately who can further their advancement and who doesn't. So everyone that can't do anything for them is worthless to them. But they'll really nurture their relationships with the people who can possibly do something for them. So they'll be perfect like sycophants to whoever is above them, constantly trying to get their position. So in the political environment, if there's someone higher than them, they'll give the appearance of being a total lackey, a total crony to this person, but when the time comes, they'll stab them in the back and take their position.
So, wow. So that's perfect for politics. And for actually military, too. For advancement and how you go up in the ranks. Now, what happens when they hit the top? Like, when they become a prime minister, a high-ranking politician, CEO? When they hit the top, what do they change? How does that operate on us? Like, as the people under these politicians or people who are affected by them?
Well, that's really what inspired Lobaczewski to write his book, is that he was writing it from a position where psychopaths were in the top positions. What he defines as a pathocracy is a social system in which not only is the leader of a country a psychopath, but by the nature of the way that person came to power, pretty much every person in a position of authority is a psychopath. And this has happened historically in, let's say, Nazi Germany, USSR, the Spanish Inquisition, the Catholic Church over centuries. So really, he describes what he calls the hysteroidal cycle. So it's basically a cycle of history where there are two important phases.
Okay.
One, which would probably be what he'd describe our society being in as today, is a cycle, a stage of hysteria and egoism and selfishness. So we've got our culture where, especially in the States, it is just hysterical. Like, there are so many instances of, let's say on flights, where someone will say something or will have some kind of protrusion on their body, and someone will get paranoid and tell the flight attendants, and they'll ground the flight.
Yeah.
Or there'll be some strange electronic device on the street, and people will think it's a bomb and call the police. And it's just this state of fear and ignorance. And it's this kind of environment that is the perfect, it's the perfect environment in which a psychopath can gain power. And once they get to power, certain things happen, and Lobaczewski describes the process in the book, the different stages it goes through, but it gets to the point, like, if something isn't done about it, it's pretty much a sure thing that what it means is, when there are psychopaths in power, what you get is genocide, and what you get is endless war and oppression of people. And this is really the process that Naomi Wolf describes in her book, The End of America, is that there's what she calls a fascist shift, and that's when a government slowly shifts to oppressing its own people. And that's really the defining characteristic of a pathocracy, is that the group of psychopaths in charge turns against their own people. Yeah,
well, we've been covering that in the Canadian version of that, and originally, why I kind of was interested in this book was that I'd been covering Stephen Harper's fundamentalist, evangelical church leanings, and that kind of thing, and how the fascist shift was going on in Canada, and with our leader Stephen Harper, and how the different stages of the fascist shift were happening here in Canada. So I love Naomi Wolf's work for sure.
Yeah, it's a great book. I recommend everyone read it. It's a lot easier to read in Ponerology, so a lot of the parallels are easier to see when reading that book. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I like about her book, well, it kind of fits into the work on that there are some Canadian psychologists doing on the people that submit to psychopathic authorities. Because Stephen Harper, you mentioned his fundamentalism. I'd hazard a guess that underneath it all, Harper isn't a fundamentalist. Now, the thing about psychopaths is that they will, just like they learn to imitate emotion, and one of the early researchers in psychopathy called it a mask of sanity. So they'll wear a mask of sanity. Just as they'll do that, politicians will wear an ideological mask. Okay. They'll pretend to be a certain ideology just to gain a support base. So in the case of Christians, they'll pretend to be Christians to garner the support of the Christian base and then exploit that to gain power. Now, this ties into the work of Bob Altemeyer, and I believe he's at the University of Manitoba.
Oh, wow.
He's done work on what is called right-wing authoritarianism. And it's kind of a misleading name because right-wing authoritarianism doesn't necessarily mean that you're on the right end of the political spectrum. It's really it really describes people who are just submissive to authority in general. It just so happens that in North America, those people happen to be right-wing, and a lot of them happen to be fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah.
Now, when Gorbachev in I can't remember what year it was, it might have been 1989, actually allowed some conversation between North American and Soviet scholars or researchers, and they found out that this personality type, the authoritarian personality type, was the same in each country. So the people that were supporting the communist government were the exact same kind of people that were supporting the right-wing government in America and Canada. And so we have this phenomenon where the kind of people that support any type of government are the same kind of people, and yet they hate each other. So there's something funny in Bob Altemeyer's book called The Authoritarians, which is available online, just to kind of describe what these people are like. Mm-hmm. And they number anywhere from 15 to 30% of the population, according to the studies he's done. And so he was doing a test to see just kind of the kind of answers they'd give to certain questions. And so he was asking what kind of laws that they'd agree to, what kind of powers that they'd give the authorities. And so I'm just going to read a short paragraph from this book. He said, "Finally, just to take this to its ludicrous extreme, I asked for reactions to a law to eliminate right-wing authoritarians. I told the subjects that right-wing authoritarians are people who are so submissive to authority, so aggressive in the name of authority, and so conventional that they may pose a threat to democratic rule. Surely, some of the high right-wing authoritarians realized that if they supported this law, they were being the very people whom the law would persecute, and the posse should therefore put itself in jail. But not all of them realized this, for authoritarian followers still favored, more than others did, a law to persecute themselves. You can almost hear the circuits clanking shut in their brains," and he quotes what they might say, "If the government says these people are dangerous, they've got to be stopped." So we've got this group of people that will support a politician no matter what, and they will fight to protect that politician. Mm-hmm. And these are the kind of people that in Milgram's study would go the entire distance to administering a lethal shock just because the authority tells them to. And so Bob Altemeyer thinks that this is the biggest problem we've got in our society now, is that there's this group of people that will follow a person like Stephen Harper to the limit if he continues to, pretend to be Christian.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of ironic because recently, we had the whole coming out of one of the big evangelicals who used to meet with Bush every week with his gay lover. His gay lover who got crack for him, and they would smoke crack and have sex, and he got busted. And then recently we just had the call girls, the whole call girl scandal, where now all of a sudden these extreme evangelical fundamentalist Christians are being busted for having call girls at their hotel rooms and this and that. So it's happening right now, the facade being ripped away of what, these politicians in the States who are extreme Christians and even had been advocating in their own senates for, very harsh laws against the very activities that they got busted for.
Yep, and that's what you find with psychopaths, is that they will, like I said, they'll pretend to be a certain thing, and they'll give a perfect image of being an upright citizen and a good Christian, and then they make one mistake or something gets revealed, and the whole mask, the whole facade comes down, and you see just what hypocrites they really are. And it's happened so many times, and it's the thing. Well, you asked about the implications of when a psychopath is in a position of power.
Mm-hmm.
What Lobaczewski noticed in Poland was that once the psychopaths got to power, they'd keep up their mask of sanity for, let's say, propaganda purposes and for dealing with other countries. But in a lot of cases, that mask would be taken off, and their true nature would be revealed. So you can kind of see this in the example of Nazi Germany, where certain people just became animals, and Lobaczewski actually called it transpersonification. It's like their personality totally changes. What actually happens is that they find an excuse to stop acting. And one of the most important things or concepts in the book is that because psychopaths don't develop emotionally, they have this twisted view of the world. They see other humans as almost this inferior species that is weak and that has these strange emotional reactions. And so a psychopath will view himself as oppressed. Now, we've seen this in the case of Joseph Fritzl in Austria recently. I don't know if you've heard about the case, but I don't know everything about it, but he kept his daughter locked in the basement of this house, like basically in a dungeon.
Yeah.
He fathered several children with her, tortured her, and he was eventually caught. And the revealing thing was when he was caught, he was talking about how his jailers were treating him like a monster, and they were oppressing him. And the thing is that in his mind, he actually believes this, because for a psychopath, total freedom means that they can do whatever they want without any kind of retribution or any kind of consequence.
Mm-hmm.
So Joseph Fritzl, in this case, would like nothing more than to be able to keep his daughter in the dungeon and torture her without any kind of opposition. And the fact that he gets opposition from the world of normal people is to him the harshest of oppression. So psychopaths actually have this twisted sense of oppression because they aren't free to do whatever they want. They aren't free to oppress people,
Wow.
to destroy people's lives. So what will happen is that you get this group of psychopaths in a country that will want to have supreme power. They'll see that the only way that they can have their freedom is that they have control over everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what kind of spurs them on to gain political power. And it's what motivates their quest. And once they achieve that power, they allow themselves to a certain degree to reveal that mask, so they can oppress their people. So that's what happens in this end of America fascist shift type thing, is that the people become the enemy. That is the non-psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
And so you will be punished for any type of free thought or any type of conscience or any type of display of conscience.
Or emotion or feeling or resonance or anything like that.
Yeah.
Wow. So what about the one thing I was wondering about is you find within these power structures a very tight-knit families, like almost I would say almost like bloodlines that seem to follow through. Is there a genetic correlation in psychopathy? Like, because if you look at the Bush dynasty, we got 3 generations, right? We got Prescott Bush, we got George Bush Sr., we got George Bush Jr., all with the same traits, all with the same kind of ideas.
Well, I think you're right. Lobaczewski, the Polish psychologists before the Nazi invasion, they had a pretty advanced understanding of psychopathy. They knew about it as much about it as we know now, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And one of the things they knew was that it was a genetic disorder. So, we even now we've got psychologists who are trying to promote the idea that it is completely socially created.
Mm-hmm.
But that just doesn't hold up to the science and the research that's been done. It is a genetic anomaly, and one of the things that Lobaczewski thought, and this hasn't been confirmed yet because we don't know which gene or which genes are the ones that give rise to a psychopathic individual, but he thought that it was transmitted by the X chromosome, kind of, in the same manner that red-green colorblindness. So red-green colorblindness affects more males than it does females.
Okay.
Just because of the way that because females have 2 X chromosomes, male only has 1. So if a male gets the infected X chromosome, he's got it no matter what. But a female can have a normal X chromosome and an infected one. So he hypothesized that psychopathy must be some kind of gene on the X chromosome, and that would explain why it's a prevalence of males who have it, and that the females who have it in a toned-down version.
Okay.
According to the research he did, there were very few full-blown female psychopaths. So just the fact that it is genetic is it's suggestive that there is some kind of, we can call it a bloodline thing to it.
Okay.
It probably gets passed down in the families.
It just amazes me if you look at the resonances between how Prescott Bush helped set up Hitler and the bombing of the Reichstag and the America-Holland lines, supplying of arms to the SS and that kind of thing. And then George Bush's Twin Towers, supplying arms to the Taliban. Like, all this stuff, it just has so many, it's almost uncanny.
Yeah, and the link between it is this psychopathy, because even in 2 cultures with opposing political structures, when it gets down to it, just like the supporters are the same, the leaders are the same.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll get examples of, let's say, American politicians like Bush's grandfather, or he wasn't a politician, but people in the power structure of a country who may be on the opposite end of the political spectrum as one of their enemies, but when it comes down to it, they're basically on the same side. So we can see this even in our world today, where leaders whose countries may be at odds a little bit, when it comes down to it, they'll agree on the important points behind the scenes, which are basically oppression of the people.
So the next thing I would ask would be, what do you think about the idea of having psychopathological testing for all leaders in politics? Do you think they'd go for it?
Well, it's a tough situation, because one of the chapters in Ponerology is on the subject of pathocracy and psychiatry. And what Lobaczewski experienced is that, in a pathocracy, the leaders will take control of psychology and of psychiatry. So there will basically be psychopathic agents in these sciences. So the only danger about testing, is that if you get a psychopath doing the testing, or if you get a psychopath that's manipulating the results, then you get it won't work.
Yeah, they'll make the traits of
they'll
make the traits of psychopathy the required traits.
Exactly.
And the traits of free thinking the undesirable traits.
Yep.
And I mean, we can see that in all sciences. We can see it in pharmacology. We can see it in any aspect of science is completely controlled by what? The corporate entities want as their end goal. The results will be whatever they want them to be. You just throw enough funding at it, and you'll get it. You know.
Yeah, and well, one of our editors interviewed Lobaczewski a year or two ago, and asked him, could anything have been done in the last 50 years that would have put our world on the right course? And he said that yes, something could have been done, and that would have been to pass laws in various countries, pass laws not allowing psychopaths to gain political power.
No, he really said that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, because I was kind of joking. I just thought it would be like, oh, wow, okay.
No, because it's like he makes an analogy in the book. He said it's kind of like in a factory, if you hired a person with red-green colorblind to do certain work where it's necessary to distinguish between red and green. It's a no-brainer that person can't do the job.
Or a criminal record for pedophiles at a daycare center.
Exactly, yeah. It's like putting a pedophile in charge of a preschool.
Yeah, it's like, go ahead. No, what about my criminal record? I don't worry about it.
So yeah, that's really one of the most important things that we can do, is to somehow get some kind of law, banning psychopaths from getting political power. The problem is that not a lot of people even know about what psychopathy is or what psychopaths are.
That scares me. Just saying that just scares me, because you're right. They would control it. And they would make it so that they would always get in. Like the terms of psychopathy, the traits, the questions, everything would be manipulated to such a point that in the end the law would be turned against you. That's what, so then we'd have to change the whole political corporate structure to make it happen.
And that's what's
tricky.
kind of depressing about it, is that it would require such a vast shift in everything, like our whole social structure, and that's why it's so depressing, is that the majority of people don't want their world to be crumbled. They don't want the foundation taken out from underneath them. So, in a sense, they'll accept a system that will give them short-term comfort if it means long-term slavery. And so, really, the only way we're going to get anywhere is if we have some radical changes to our political system, but that's not going to happen. It's because people will hold on to this system because it provides some degree of comfort. It gives them food and shelter.
Security of survival.
Yeah.
Well, in an animal sense, like.
Yep.
You know where your food's coming from. You know where you're driving to. That kind of base security.
And anything that threatens to take that away, or anything that threatens to take that from you, you're going to be aggressive towards. You're going to react aggressively towards. So, so I don't, as great an idea it is, I don't know if that will work. I think one of the things that can work, or probably the only thing that's a foolproof way, is to, first of all, get public awareness up about psychopathy, what its true nature is, and once people have a good understanding for it, they can kind of see it in their own lives and see, see how it affects their own lives. And once it starts on that grassroots level, then it can apply to every social structure, because if every person can recognize a psychopath who is manipulating them or who is manipulating a group of people, then that psychopath has no power. It's like a magician who has its tricks revealed. The tricks no longer work if you know the secret behind them.
Don't look behind the curtain.
Yep.
In the Wizard of Oz, Yeah. So it's more, the best thing we can do is just become aware of the kind of traits that a psychopath has, and kind of just try and be aware of them and bring them to light if you can.
And one of the one of the recommendations that Lobaczewski makes in the book is that something that people can do right now, and that is to analyze what politicians say really closely, because they use the same tricks no matter what country they're from, and some of them are pretty obvious once you get to know them. One is what Hitler and was it Goering or a couple of them called the big lie. So what a psychopath will do is tell a lie. It'll be a big lie, and then they'll tell it over and over and over again as if it's 100% true. And the effect that this has on a normal person is that they'll think that, a normal person wouldn't tell such a big lie. They'd feel guilty about it. So they think that this person must be telling the truth, or they must at least think that it's the truth. So they'll give this person a little bit of leeway and say, okay, well, he can't be lying, but if he isn't lying, if he's wrong, then he might just be a little bit wrong. He might still be right, and so it brings all these doubts into the person's mind. But that's what the liar intends.
Yeah, their humanism is the very thing the psychopath is manipulating for his own good.
Yeah. As psychopaths grow up, they learn all our weaknesses. Basically, they can see everything that all our emotional weaknesses, because we have tendencies to think illogically and to make bad choices, and they're aware of all of that. They also take all of our good qualities and use them against us. So, I just saw the new Indiana Jones movie today, and there's a good example in there where it's like the hostage-taking example. A psychopath knows that if you take a family member hostage, and if you threaten to do something to them, then their family members, out of love, will do what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this. We're seeing this in Israel right now, for the last 60 years, where the IDF will take some Palestinians, they'll arrest them, take them to jail, and then threaten to do something to their family if they don't comply.
Yeah.
And, every police state does that.
Look at Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, Guantanamo Bay. It's the same thing everywhere. And so, that's one of the things we can use is that whenever we see this dynamic, we can identify that there must be a pathological root to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, because a normal person doesn't torture someone for no reason at all. Unfortunately, I forget his name, but there's a researcher in the States who has done a lot of research on the nature of torturers. And what he says is that torturers are almost always psychopathic. However, there will be non-psychopathic torturers, but the only reason they do it is because they are coerced into doing it by a psychopath. And so, anytime you have torture going on, there's a psychopathic influence somewhere in that system.
In the structure of it. Oh man! So this isn't. The listeners are out there with their wide eyes, going, "Oh my God!" Like the doom and destruction. No, yeah. But like, I guess one of the best things we can do then is foster compassion and kindness, and I actually have Gandhi's book here, Gandhi on Nonviolence. So what I'll do is I'll just flick through, and I'll just pick any random page. I'll do some stitchiomancy here, or no bibliomancy. Okay, what does he say? The lawlessness, if it can be so described, that I have advocated is like prescribing wholesome and necessary food for the body. Behind my lawlessness there is discipline, construction, and well-being of society. It is an effective protest against an unjust and injurious law or act. It can never take the form of selfish evasion of duty. He's talking about nonviolence and satyagraha.
Well, the thing about Gandhi is that he embodied, every opposite of a psychopathic trait, and that's the problem. Is that in our society it seems that we don't value these traits any longer. These traits that Gandhi had. Instead, we I wrote an article recently, just commenting on my dissatisfaction at the state of the world, the fact that we basically worship sports heroes and celebrities and people who are really unremarkable individuals.
Yeah, really, in the scheme of things. Yeah, we don't. That's one thing, we don't have mentors.
No, we don't have mentors. We don't have a true moral compass.
Or like elders who we can say, well, that's the way we have to be. Not the way we have to be, but there is an expression of true humanity, of compassion, love, understanding, all those traits that make us like that are the diamonds of our hearts, like they're the real. That's where we're trying to go, is towards compassion and love and understanding and goodwill and charity and all those traits. But those aren't the traits that we're promoting, that's for sure.
No.
We're promoting fast cars, tits, tough guys, bullies, all that crazy stuff. I mean, there's nowhere you can go now without seeing it.
No, and this is all in Ponerology. Again, this is in the Cycles chapter where he talks about it's this kind of society that we live in that it's like it weakens our immune system. The fact that we don't have these strong values, that we just have non-values, and we're a consumer society with, that's just looking to be comfortable and to, have the next gadget. And it's this lack of awareness and this lack of compassion that really makes us weak to this, what Lobaczewski calls social disease of pathocracy. And unfortunately, that means that things are just going to get progressively worse until, or unless we, find our moral center and, re-embody these values. Because throughout the book, Lobaczewski has a really, humanitarian viewpoint, this nonviolence. He points out that, as was the case with the communist revolution, there are all these ideologies that, have some good intentions, like the communist revolution, but they used violent means, and violence breeds violence. And when you use a psychopath's tricks, it kind of blurs the lines, and that just gives a psychopath,
you're playing their game,
horse.
Yeah.
So as I was saying about sports heroes and celebrities, we also have this, ultimate fighting and things like that, where we worship physical domination, and we can see this in the American, wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, where this whole political structure worships military superiority and being stronger than the other person, and that's just a recipe for disaster.
I was just at a lacrosse tournament on the weekend. All weekend. Amateur sports. Pretty mind-blowing. I don't know, but there is something about team. I don't know. Here I am. My son's playing sports, and I can see that kind of testosterone kind of power, the will of sports and of dominating and that kind of thing.
Well, and you can really see it in a lot of the parents in sports.
Oh yeah. Trust me, try being the only parent with hair past their shoulders and with five different hues of colors on my clothing. At one point, one parent yelled out, "Shut up!" And I was like, whoa. But anyway, I don't mind.
No.
He scored 5 goals. No, I'm kidding. Could you imagine, here I'm talking on the radio, but then we flash to the lacrosse game, kick his ass! Kick him! No, I'm not like that. But yeah, I can see, we can see it in all aspects of corporate media, advertising. Everything we aim towards is domination of women, domination of Earth, domination of each other, domination of space. It's, it's everywhere. Humanity is psychopathic, but it's not that. It's in reaction to psychopathic individuals in power.
Yeah, like, the thing about a psychopath is that a psychopath can't change, a human can't. So, as guilty as psychopaths are, we're pretty guilty ourselves for not doing anything about it and becoming so complacent, and basically becoming psychopaths ourselves to a certain degree.
Or psychoempathic.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yep.
Yikes. So we should probably bring her to a close here. Where do you think, I don't know how we could leave this on an upbeat, or what do you think would be the best zone to kind of wind it down? Or
Well, I think
I know I'm saying it for you, if you, because it must be, it's like 1:30 there. No, 12:30?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's getting late, but I should probably wind down here pretty soon. But where do you think there's no happy ending, really, in some sense? But is there anything that you can think of that would be a good way to kind of?
Well, I think you said something which is really important, is that the whole thing about human values and those qualities which are truly human, and the only thing we can do is strive to become more human. And we can do that individually, and it's like there's a spectrum of humanity, and there are two poles, one on each end, and there's the psychopathic pole, and then there's the pole of conscience. And right now, the psychopathic pole is pretty strong, and it's pulling a lot of people towards it. But as more and more people take on responsibility and become poles of conscience, that will attract people towards them. And we see this happening repeatedly in history with great individuals like Gandhi, who inspire people to be better. And so really the hope for humanity lies in every person with a conscience and who can see this. And luckily we have something that people didn't have in communist Russia or Germany. We have things like the internet, where we can communicate with each other relatively freely. Now, unfortunately, the internet itself is coming under increasing control, but it's still free to a degree. And as long as we have it, we have a way of instant communication and getting the message across. So the hope of the world is really, it's hard work. Like, there's no hope by sitting back and watching things happen. Which is the unfortunate thing, is that social change takes action, but it has to be right action. It can't be psychopathic, because psychopathy breeds psychopathy. And so things are pretty dismal, but I just like to look at it as baby steps. We do whatever we can. I do whatever I can to. That's why I'm working at this publishing company, to try to get this work across, this knowledge. This idea of psychopathy, because the more people understand, the healthier they will be, and the less influence psychopaths will have.
I just had a brain flash, but the thing that I think that the greatest thing we have really is each other, and the promotion of our best traits of each other.
Yeah.
Like, in forming community, and in creating a culture that promotes those values, but through each other. Because
yep, and I think once you get further in the book, you'll see that Lobaczewski would agree with you, and he has a lot to say on that subject, and that is the world of normal people and what we can do. And he focuses on mainly what they did under harsher, what I'd think are harsher realities than we are facing right now, and what we may face in the future.
Yeah.
So, really, the hope is always there in humanity, because even under the harshest conditions, things can change, and things have changed in the past. No matter how many times in the past that free thought has been crushed, it's always survived, and it's survived because of the group of humanity that values conscience.
Yeah.
And all we can do is try to be that group, and be that group of conscience. And it's harder to be it in a society like ours. Ironically, it seems to be easier under harsh oppression, because you really understand what you lost. Yes,
exactly. Yeah, we're like the frog in the boiling water that's slowly being heated up until it's boiling. The frog doesn't realize.
So and then once we realize it, we'll want to jump, but we'll realize we've got to be a bit. It's not going to be that easy to just jump out.
Yeah.
We're going to have to find a way out of there, and it's going to be a labyrinth. But
yeah, you're going to have to drink the water and then jump.
Yep.
No, or something. Well, man, it has been so good to have you in the studio.
Well, it's been great.
I'm glad that I met you up there, and that we've had this conversation. Hopefully, in the future, we can maybe cover some other books from Red Pill Press.
That'd be cool.
Could you do a plug for Red Pill Press, like where people could look for these books and that kind of thing?
Our website is at redpillpress.com. That's red as in the color, pill as in, red pill as in the matrix. So redpillpress.com. You can also go to the Ponerology website, which is Ponerology, that's PONEROLOGY.com. And there are a bunch of links on that site and the Red Pill site, which will take you to, a lot of the, to where you can buy the book, and to websites that talk about the kind of things that are in the book.
Wow.
So yeah, Ponerology is available on the website. I believe I think it's between $20 and $25 Canadian online.
Okay. That's pretty reasonable. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's a valuable book, that's for sure.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
I've been talking with Harrison, but I didn't get your last name again.
Koehli.
Harrison Koehli, from Red Pill Press out of Grand Prairie, and we were talking about the book Political Ponerology by Andrew M. Can you say his last name again?
Lobaczewski.
That's not how it's spelled. No, I know. It can be tricky, those things.
Yeah, Polish has some weird pronunciations. I don't get them right all the time.
But thank you so much, and hopefully we'll talk again.
Great, I look forward to it.
And listeners, check out the websites and snap up some books. We need to learn these things right away. Take care. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, blessings.
Bye.
Bye. Whoa. Brace your kippers. Oh, my God. Whoa.